Welcome to the RNL, the Revolution Nothing Less show. Today is Thursday, February 7th. This is our 234th episode. My name is Sunsara Taylor, and I'm joined today by Annie Day. Welcome, Annie.
Very glad to be here. This show brings alive the need for an actual revolution to overthrow this whole system of capitalism and imperialism. A revolution to bring a whole new world into being. A socialist system based on the new communism that's been envisioned by the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian.
There really is a whole different way we could be living, a far better way that human society could be organized. And later in today's show, you're going to hear directly from Bob Avakian, the architect who has forged the new communism, bringing this alive, what this would be like, as we share with you an excerpt of the interview I had the great honor of doing with him recently, which we began to broadcast last week, and which...
So we're going to announce it right up front. Being released soon on Bob Avakian's official social media platform at Bob Avakian Official. And on this channel, we will be releasing soon first part 1 and part 2 of this 2-part interview. So hit the notification bell, subscribe, and make sure you get the alert as soon as it's released.
Well, it has been another week of Trump's breakneck trampling of the rule of law, his fascist takeover of the federal government, his terror and raids against immigrants, his encouragement of violent fascist thugs, and now his open, brazen colonial declaration that he intends to ethnically cleanse all the Palestinians from Gaza and take over Gaza so it is literally owned by the U.S.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
We'll own it.
This is a nuclear-backed, imperialist fascist gangster telling you openly that he intends to scarf up other people's lands for the U.S. empire. Greenland, Panama, now Gaza. And he and Nazis standing next to him are already drenched in the blood of the Palestinian people. Gaza has already been reduced to rubble. And he's casually talking about turning it into a vacation resort for the wealthy.
The Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something.
Fuck you, Donald Trump.
That's right. We cannot let these monsters have the future. Which is why it's important to highlight that this week we've begun to see some important stirrings and outpourings of fury and defiance from among the decent people in this country who until now had been stunned, paralyzed, and all too silent. It began this last weekend with people standing up to Trump's assault on immigrants. Thousands took over the freeway in Los Angeles and stayed there for 4 to 6 hours. Hundreds squared off with violent police in West Phoenix, Arizona. Over 22,000 marched in Houston, Texas, the laboratory for fascism in this country. Hundreds in Dallas did a protest where they did an anti-ICE line dance. And in some places, a few people stood out on a corner with signs. In other places, it's been hundreds and thousands, organized spontaneously through social media. Many of these were the birthright generation. Young people with citizenship, but whose parents or aunts or uncles or grandparents don't have papers.
We're just here to speak our voice for our parents who can't come out, that they come from another country, and we just want to come out here and speak for them.
Not just our parents, also the people, the workers that just come here and just help us every day. I'm pretty disappointed because many immigrants did so much for us, and it's not right if a lot of people want to take them away from us. So
I think people should be able to come and live here peacefully without having fear.
There's a lot of kids at school that feel some sort of fear because they know that one of these days, if ICE ever comes near their parents or something, they can possibly get deported.
This has been righteous and beautiful. But we also have to say it's a problem that so far these outpourings have not been joined nearly enough from people from other backgrounds. But here we do want to amplify something that's particularly important. Black people speaking out for immigrants and against the oppressors divide and conquer.
I really just sat here and watched 12 snatch up some Mexicans, bro. This shit getting real out here. And if you think that shit funny, block me right now, bro. We is not the same, bro. You not my kind.
I've seen black people talk about, oh, this ICE situation doesn't have anything to do with us. We don't have anything to do with that, y'all. We need to mind our business. How dare you? How dare you sit there in your slave descended skin and you say, Overturning the 14th Amendment has nothing to do with us. The 14th Amendment gave birthright citizenship. Who didn't have birthright citizenship before the amendment was put into place?
Y'all really walking around here talking about, well, they're not Americans. And like, what's pissing me off more than anything is there was a point in time where we weren't considered Americans. Like, y'all should know more than you know what I'm saying? We know more than anybody that that's not okay. You don't just rip kids away from their families. These kids are scared. Like, I ain't never been scared to go to church, to go to school. They're scared. So yeah, at this point, it's no longer about procedures and protocols. And now we're talking about humans. Human now. That's what we got to think about. Human to fucking human.
They think that, they could divide us and, keep us separated and, fighting and all that. No, we're waking up.
I can tell you right now. I can tell you right now. Fuck no.
I stand with Mexico, which I did yesterday in Dallas. Need to go on every motherfucking day for the rest of the year. We need to shut down freeways and realize that we got the motherfucking power as the motherfucking people.
I always keep that back door open. Just come through that back door and put you upstairs. They knock on this door, they ain't getting in here. Y'all ain't going nowhere. I got you back.
You're like, man, those so-and-so don't like us. You ever like them? You ever tried to get to know them? You ever tried to try their food? My whole page is about trying other cultures' stuff, mainly food, and then you show love that way, and then people show you love.
The fact that I'm black and have to say I feel the same fucking way for if it was black people is beyond me. Like, it's fucking sickening that, like, I don't want to hear, oh, if it was us, it would be the other. Yo, I just give a fuck about everybody, bro. I stand for y'all the same fucking way that I see that Hispanics in my comments are fucking standing with me. What the fuck is y'all talking about? Same thing with white people. They standing with me too, and I'm standing with them.
I'm standing with y'all. I'm standing with y'all. Y'all keep doing what y'all doing. Protest.
Yeah, nigga, fuck Donald Trump. Yeah, fuck Donald Trump.
Y'all can't beat this black and brown. Y'all found out. Y'all fucked around.
I mean, these fascists have been demonizing all kinds of immigrants. They saying that Haitian immigrants are eating your cats and dogs. They're saying that, Venezuelan immigrants are invading. The question is, when you actually see them coming after people with their whole white supremacist program, what are you going to do? Are you going to fall in line and sound like these rabid white racists, or are you going to, actually fight to put it into what you and the immigrants are being put through?
The first time I saw those videos, it brought tears to my eyes. We need a lot more of this kind of unity of people standing up together against our common enemy. It's also very important, and we want to highlight that the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity was out among these outpourings of immigrants, as well as some of the other protests that we'll be showing you in a minute, uniting and bringing understanding and direction that people desperately need. And importantly, the Revcom Corps also held protests last Saturday that culminated the week of action they had called around the slogans, "In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America."
In the name of humanity! In the name of humanity! We refuse! We refuse! We refuse! We refuse! Fascist America! Fascist America!
And this whole system is rotten and illegitimate. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. On Monday, hundreds protested for trans rights in New York City.
A show of solidarity for the transgender community in a packed St. Barton Park.
On Tuesday, people in D.C. protested Elon Musk's takeover of the Treasury, including his shutting down of U.S. aid around the world, putting millions and millions of lives at risk. And also on Tuesday, people protested Netanyahu's visit with Trump. And on Wednesday, protests sprung up at state capitals and other places around the country, targeting Trump's Project 2025 and calling the regime fascist. These protests bubbled up, mostly from people who had never done anything like this before, and they mushroomed in size in just a few days. People expressed tremendous outrage and fear at them, importantly making analogies and drawing lessons from Nazi Germany. And many were extremely receptive to the Revcoms, where we were able to be out amongst them.
We have to take on these attacks as part of building a movement to stop fascism. Because Trump MAGA is breaking the law and changing the law. Just like Hitler did.
All this is extremely important, and it could be and needs to be the beginning of decent people really rising up. But it's also not nearly enough, not just in what people are doing, but in what they're understanding. And this is something that you and Andy Z wrote about in an important article on revcom.us this week. So could you talk about why you wrote it and what you're arguing for?
Yeah, Andy, who's often on this show as well, Andy Z and I wrote this piece that was calling on people to take the political offensive against the whole Trump MAGA fascist program with the aim of defeating it. And there's at least a couple major points I want to pull out of this. The first is that we're facing fascism. And fascism is not just a curse word. It is a qualitative change in the form of rule in this country. It is more than a collection of even the most horrific policies and attacks on different sections of the people. And Bob Avakian, in his New Year's message, 2025, a new year, profound new challenges, and a profoundly positive way forward in the face of real horror. And in the very first point in this message, speaks scientifically and clearly to what fascism is.
Trump 2025 is not just another administration coming into office. This is fascism, the undisguised dictatorship of this system of capitalism imperialism in the world's most powerful capitalist imperialist country. Openly and aggressively oppressive and repressive. A fascism fueled by anti-scientific and Christian fundamentalist lunacy, moving to forcibly impose its racist, immigrant-persecuting, woman and LGBT-hating MAGA madness, determined to unleash unbridled capitalist plunder and naked imperialist expansionism, prepared to violently crush any opposition or resistance.
Well, that's an important and powerful excerpt. And maybe you could talk about why is that so important for people to understand, and how do you think that's different than how they normally or commonly understand it?
Well, I think that what Bob Avakian speaks to in that, and we quote him in this piece that Andy and I wrote, it includes the content of fascism, the white supremacy, the hatred of women and LGBT people, the outright dehumanization and terror against immigrants, the brazen expansionism and imperialist plunder, all of the anti-scientific horror of what this means politically and for people's lives. But the other thing that Bob Avakian speaks to that I think a lot of people don't grasp is the way that fascism sets out to obliterate any space in society for anybody to oppose this fascist program, either from within the halls of power, within government, within other institutions of society, or from the street rising up. This is the meaning. This is what we have to understand is going on when Trump does something like purge the FBI and install his loyalists, or does the same to other instruments of law enforcement. This is the meaning of Trump removing the security detail from high-level imperialist operatives like Mark Milley, a general, because he wasn't loyal enough to Trump and didn't do all his fascist marching orders in the first Trump regime. And literally, Trump has said he's committed treason and openly talked about how the penalty for treason is death. And now he took away his security detail. This is like putting a threat on his life in front of the whole world. And that's meant to intimidate anybody who'd oppose him. And this is also the meaning of Trump pardoning the January 6th insurrectionists, saying and giving a backing and green light to violent fascist thugs who will carry out and terrorize people in the service of Trump's MAGA fascism. So this is moving, as Bob Avakian said, towards something that is openly repressive and oppressive, an open dictatorial rule of the capitalist imperialist system. And it's important that people understand that this needs to be stopped before it is able to consolidate, and it's moving very fast by design.
Yeah, in your article, you quoted the fascist strategist and downright Nazi Steve Bannon that illustrated this explicitly.
All we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with three things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover. But we got to start with muzzle velocity. So it's got to start and it's got to hammer. It's got to muzzle velocity.
Yeah, these fascist strategy is to overwhelm people. Shock and awe, flood the zone. They talk about this on purpose, and they are intending to keep the decent people so thoroughly stunned, paralyzed, off balance, overwhelmed, trying to fight each last attack one by one and unable to keep up with the whole. And honestly, if we fight that way, one attack at a time, they'll be right. Our side will be overwhelmed. And it's almost certain that people will be thrown on the defensive and trapped fighting at best rear guard battles on losing ground as the whole fascist juggernaut barrels ahead. Which is why it's so important what Bob Avakian has fought for and what we put in this letter that we wrote at revcom.us about the need for people to come together from all our different perspectives, all our different walks of life, and unite around the single unifying mission and demand in the name of humanity. We refuse to accept a fascist America and wage a battle to defeat the entire fascist program as a whole, to go on the offensive against it. Now, Bob Avakian spells out what this looks like, what this needs to mean more fully in his New Year's message. He speaks about it in his social media at Bob Avakian Official, and he gets into it in the interview that I was able to do with him and that we'll be sharing more of a little bit later in the show. But what I think would be helpful is to play a clip of Noche Diaz, who's the spokesperson for the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity, speaking about and bringing alive this vision at a rally that he was out at over the weekend.
In the New Year's statement from Bob Avakian, he put it this way: "This is a time for reaching out to all the others who feel the same outrage at Trump's MAGA fascism. A time for collective action and self-sacrificing struggle for the greater good of defeating this fascism. This is a time for uniting all who can be united in determined struggle against this fascism, beginning now, before this fascist rule is fully consolidated, and to prevent it from being fully consolidated. A movement aiming to become so massive and powerful that it creates a profound political crisis such that Trump cannot govern the country and implement his fascist program. Everyone that we reach today, everyone who hears your voice, everyone who sees your signs and your feet marching in these streets, everyone we reach in word and deed is enlisted in this fight for the greater good. Later today, tomorrow, and all week, gather with the people that you're meeting here today. Plot and plan for how to take serious and creative action and how to make this a reality, this political crisis."
Yeah, you can see the glimmers for what Noche is talking about just in the last few days in the streets of people pouring out in protest, but also in an example like this doctor in New York who said he would not abide by this federal ban on trans medical care, and he would willingly be arrested to provide people the care they need. And that kind of thing is what we saw took place in 2020 with the outpourings of millions of people after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, where millions poured out into the streets, and it wasn't just street protests. It shook every institution of society and reached up into the halls of education, of science, everywhere. People had to respond to what the masses of people are demanding. That's what has to happen now. And I think in what you saw and what Noche was doing was fighting for an understanding that won't happen spontaneously. And so I think that going into wherever people are rising up and beginning to stir and awaken and be shocked and jolted, that's the understanding that people have to go out and fight for.
Yeah, and let me just repeat what the understanding we need to bring out is the mission to create such a profound political crisis through our mass resistance in every quarter of society that is sustained and relentless, that Donald Trump is not able to govern the country and implement his fascist program. It actually needs to be a resistance aimed at defeating the fascism. And that's what Noche was bringing out. That's what Bob Avakian has been driving at. And there's just one other thing I wanted to pull out of the letter that we wrote, me and Andy, which is that we were making the point that for those of us who understand that this fascism is rooted and grew out of the system of capitalism, imperialism, and that a revolution is needed to get rid of this system, and to those who are coming to understand this, we are fighting for people to join the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity, to get organized for this revolution, to take up the leadership Bob Avakian is providing for this, even as we work to unite with many others from very different perspectives, including many who don't agree with revolution, many who will never agree with revolution, to stand shoulder to shoulder in fighting to create this profound political crisis that can defeat this fascist program. And to give more life to this orientation and actually ground it much more deeply and scientifically, we want to go now to the recent interview that I did with Bob Avakian, where he speaks about a number of things very relevant to this moment and how we go forward.
So the Revcoms have raised, and you have put out as well in your social media, two very important slogans. One is, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. And the second is, this whole system is rotten and illegitimate. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the importance of these two slogans, each of them in their own right, and maybe also how they relate to each other.
The refusal to accept fascism is extremely important. That goes along with what we were just talking about, the question you just asked. Why is this a time for righteous anger and revolutionary determination? But the first part of that first slogan is also very important. It's the foundation that people need to have to really take this on. That is, in the name of humanity. You know, that's the orientation that people need, not, you know, what's good for America, the most predatory destructive imperialist power in the history of the world. Not what's good for America, but what are the interests of humanity. And we proceed from that. And on that basis, you know, for the people of the whole world, it is a very disastrous development to have this fascism coming to power in this most powerful capitalist imperialist country, which is already wreaking havoc on masses of people around the world as well as in this country anyway. But this is going to take it to a much more aggressive, even more extreme level and expression. So in the name of humanity, that's how we approach this. So that's the first slogan. And out of that, because we understand what the effects of this and the consequences of this is for humanity, that is why we refuse to accept it. Unlike all these bourgeois capitalist politicians who are rushing to make, you know, good with Trump and go kiss the ring and all the rest of it, we have no interest in that. Our interests lie with the masses of humanity. It goes along with what I said before. You know, the important thing is the whole world. The whole world comes first, not American imperialism and American chauvinism with the ridiculous and outrageous idea that this country, with its terrible history and present reality, is somehow better and more important than every other place in the world, and that the people here are somehow special and more important than all the masses of humanity in the billions around the world. So that's the basis for the first slogan. Now, as for the second slogan, it goes to what I was saying just a little while ago. This fascism arose out of and is fed by the soil of this whole system and this whole history, the whole history of this country. If you just look at the history, look, you know, a lot of people said, you know, back in, you know, the 80s and so on, they rose up against South African apartheid. What was being done to people in this country, particularly though not only in the South, from the time shortly after the Civil War all the way up through the 1960s, was every bit as horrific, if not more so, than what was happening, the terrible oppression of the masses of African people in South Africa under apartheid. So, you know, how can you look at that and not recognize, once again, that this is the soil out of which this fascism has grown? It is why, once again, you see the Confederate flags being, you know, taken through the Capitol on January 6th at the time shortly after the last election. You know, it is why these people, you know, some of these people openly say that slavery was better, supposedly even better for black people than the time since. You know, this is what you're dealing with in this country, and it is this system and the way it has developed in this particular country that has given rise to this fascism. And that should tell everybody that there's something fundamentally sick about this whole system. Plus the fact that it's a completely outmoded way for people to live and for society to be organized. So that, you know, a small number of billionaires, for example, control more wealth than more than half the world's population. You know, and that's just not some kind of like, oh, you know, we should redistribute the wealth kind of thing. It flows out of the nature of a system that's based on exploiting masses of people all over the world. You know, the women in Bangladesh, literally the children in Africa, the people in Haiti and other places in the Caribbean and Latin America who are, you know, working under, you know, horrific conditions, producing the wealth that goes into the coffers, if you will, of these billionaires and the heads of the capitalist system in this country. I mean, just think about a simple fact. You hear about all this stuff about immigrants and Trump talking about renaming the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. Think about a simple fact like this, which tells you a lot of what you need to know. The wages of people producing things that are consumed in this country in Mexico are approximately 1/10 of what people working in this country working on the same things make. And that is why, for example, even people who are not well off in this country can have a certain amount of consumer goods because of the super exploitation of people in these countries all over the world, which enables these consumer goods in this country to be relatively low priced. And this is blood money that we don't want and that no decent person should want. And it's absolutely absurd that this is the way the world is organized and enforced on the masses of people. You know, think about it. There is the technology and the knowledge that has existed for some time now and is constantly being developed so that everyone in the world could have all their basic needs met, and there would still be a lot to enable people to engage in cultural efforts and all kinds of other, you know, things beyond just mere survival. There is absolutely no reason why anyone is suffering from want in this world today with the technology and knowledge that exists. There's only one reason. There's no good reason, but there is a reason. And that reason is that all this is controlled by a small number of capitalist exploiters who don't just exploit within this country or any other particular country, but super exploit people all over the world, especially in places like Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Latin America. So, you know, this fascism flows out of all of this. It's an extreme, but in a certain sense, a logical expression or extension of all that I've been talking about. And it's completely unnecessary. We could have a whole different way to live. And this is what's being kept from people. And understanding, you know, that there's no reason why we have to keep living this way with such deprivation and destruction, to say nothing about the threat of nuclear war that's becoming greater these days between the U.S. on the one hand and its rivals in Russia and China, all of whom, by the way, are nuclear-armed imperialist powers, and with the whole destruction of the environment, all of which is posing existential threats to humanity as a whole. There's absolutely no reason why we're still living this way. So just to, you know, go back to that, that's why we say this system is completely rotten and illegitimate. Any system that, you know, brings about the things that I'm talking about and perpetuates itself on the backs of masses of people, any such system is completely illegitimate. And yes, there is a positive alternative to all this, much as they don't want people to know it.
So I'd like to pick up on the second part of that slogan. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. Let's say we had a time machine and we could just fast forward into the future, into a revolutionary society, one that's based in the Constitution that you wrote for the new Socialist Republic in North America. How would things be different? What would it look like? What would it feel like? I know it's a really big question, but maybe you could just give a sense of what it would be like.
Yes, that is a big question, but it's an important question. Some things would be very different and would feel very different right away. For example, under the present system in this country, more than 1,000 people are killed by police every year, disproportionate numbers of black people and other people of color. There's mass incarceration of people who've been deprived by this system of a decent way to live and have been essentially, many of them, millions and millions of them, locked out of the formal economy. So immediately, that would be done with. Immediately, yes, there will be a need for security forces. There will be a need for forces to defend the revolution, while at the same time defending the rights of the people in a way that is not done under this system. But there will no more be this rampant and wanton murder of murder by police of masses of people over and over and over again, killing more than 3 people a day in this country, and doing it in the most wanton, and brutal ways, infused in many cases just with the most grotesque racism. That will be over right away in day one. And, it will not be the situation where people are without a means to a decent life, even though there will be a transition period where breaking free from the whole world capitalist imperialist economy will be a real struggle. One of the goals is we are no longer going to build an economy based on exploiting the children in Africa and women in the tens and even hundreds of millions, not only in Bangladesh but around the world, and masses of people. At the present time, for example, under this system, the great majority of the things that are produced, that are consumed in this country, are produced outside of this country. And by the way, for all the Trumpites and all the rest of the, lunatic people out there, that is not going to change. Trump is not going to bring back all these old, factory jobs and everything, because this system could not survive for any period of time, maybe not even a week, if it weren't exploiting and super exploiting these people around the world. And we are going to move away from that. And as we're doing so, everyone will be able to and will be involved in developing the economy and having a decent way to live, even while we're carrying out the struggle to completely break free of this imperialist parasitism feeding off the masses of people in the world. So that will be radically different too. Also, certain things like, I mentioned evolution. Evolution is written into the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic that I've written. It's a scientifically established fact, one of the most firmly established facts in all of science, and in the new society, it's going to be treated as such. And if people don't understand that, then there'll be education and struggle as necessary to enable them to understand it. And other things, for example, the right to abortion as well as the right to birth control, that is also written into this Constitution. There will be no depriving of women of their fundamental rights. The same with the rights of LGBT people. That is written also into this Constitution. That is foundational to what we're talking about. So on every level, in terms of abolishing the oppression and exploitation that is the foundation of this system, which people just assume is the normal way that things have to be, all that will be, overturned and transformed and done away with, starting on day one. And then there's a whole realm of education and culture, which, the purpose of which will not be to brainwash people and condition them to serve an exploiting system. But the purpose of it will be to enable people actually to pursue the truth on a scientific basis, giving expression to curiosity, which is suppressed in 100 ways under this system. It's one of the most striking things, especially these days, the way in which curiosity is suffocated in people. The lack of curiosity is a striking phenomenon in this society now. A whole different culture which gives expression to uplifting relations among people, emancipating relations. And then there's a whole international dimension where the whole orientation of the new socialist government will not be to carry out military action to slaughter people or to back something like the genocide now being carried out by Israel against the Palestinian people in order to reinforce by bloody means the basis for all this exploitation and super exploitation of people around the world. Instead, the whole international orientation of this new society and new government will be to support people rising up against this and fighting for the same emancipating goals. So we could go on and on, but in every level, things will be radically different. And, people say, people might, like to go back to John Lennon's Imagine. You might say this is just a dream, to paraphrase that, but it's not. It's grounded in the reality of what is possible now. As I spoke to, thousands of years of human history and development have led to a situation where there's a foundation for everything I'm talking about to actually be achieved. There is a material foundation in the world for this. As I said, in the technology and the knowledge that exists. The only thing that's standing in the way, and doing so in a monstrously bloody way, is this system of capitalism, imperialism. And as that's swept away through a revolution of millions of people, then we can go to work to actually bring about the reality of what I'm talking about, some of which, once again, will begin right on day one. No, there will not be any more mothers and fathers, loved ones and others, having to cry these tears of anguish and outrage over their loved ones being cut down by the people who enforce the system. Instead, this system will be backing the masses of people. And as I've said before, with the new security forces that are envisioned and will be brought into being with this revolution and envision this Constitution, the orientation that people will be led with is that they would rather give up their lives themselves than wantonly kill masses of people, as happens every day under this system.
Well, I'm going to want to ask you more about this as we go along, because I think today people have such an impoverishment of even being able to imagine that anything could be different than what we see today. And what you're describing is really emancipating. It's very liberating. And I think it's important that we explore this more fully.
That was Bob Avakian in an excerpt from a recent interview that will be coming out soon. Now think about the power and the beauty of what you just heard. Think about the difference it would make if this were heard by millions. There is a generation right now that can more readily envision the end of the world than they can the end of capitalism. And they need to hear what Bob Avakian just spoke to about the potential for a radically different world in this world. They need to know that there's a real future worth fighting for. They need to debate and raise their sights to this. What difference would it make if all of those who are being shocked and jolted by Trump MAGA fascism were hearing this? If they were seeing their real interests, their deeper interests, not in thinking about what's good for America, but in recognizing their common humanity with the people of the world? What difference would it make if people were recognizing that fascism really could happen here, and it is happening? And what difference would it make if they were being driven to look at the roots of this fascism in the system itself, and to know how we can not just defeat it, but get to a whole different world? Well, this could make all the difference. That's why we're in the middle of a national campaign to get Bob Avakian's voice, his leadership, reaching millions. We're in the midst of a $10,000 drive to pay for online advertising and an on-the-ground grassroots movement to spread at Bob Avakian Official. And this $10,000 is just a small fraction of the scale of funding needed to get Avakian's voice in front of millions quickly, up against all the very well-funded politicians and media mouthpieces of this system that are trying to maintain the status quo. Look, let's be real. It's fucking dark right now. And there are millions who care about the people of Palestine, who see the humanity of our immigrant sisters and brothers, who don't want to be complicit in a fascist nightmare, but they don't see a way through. It's like you're in a dark room and the walls are closing in, but then someone hands you a flashlight to see the cracks in the walls, to show how you can escape. The leadership that Bob Avakian is providing right now is like that flashlight, so that we can see the weaknesses of this system, so we can see where the strengths of the people lie. And he's waging struggle with the thinking of people so that we can act on those strengths instead of all the bullshit ways of thinking of this system. A flashlight so that we can see, as Bob Avakian says in his New Year's message, that there is a profoundly positive way forward in the face of what are very real horrors. This won't be easy, but it is real. And it's not a mystery either. The leadership that Bob Avakian is providing is rooted in science. Well, what does that mean? Well, science means investigating reality, gathering evidence, identifying patterns, and then looking deeper at what gave rise to those patterns, and drawing conclusions about reality on that basis. I know people hear science and they think biology or ecology, chemistry or physics. Those are important fields of science, but you can also apply science to human society. And science enables you to look beneath the surface of the society, to understand why the world is so messed up, and to understand what can be done about it and how. Science helps you envision what doesn't exist, but what could actually be. That's what we just heard from Bob Avakian about what kind of world really is possible. And he's providing leadership based in this science. Bob Avakian came forward in the revolutionary upsurge of the 1960s, and he never backed down from what's needed for real revolution. He put himself to learning and building on the liberating accomplishments of previous revolutions, but also addressing the biggest problems of making revolution and confronting real errors. He's developed the new communism, a framework for bringing into being a society which is not just meeting people's needs, as absolutely essential as that is, but also unleashing debate, ferment, and a whole liberating transformation of the way that human beings relate to each other and to the planet. This is rare, and people need to know it. They need to seriously engage and debate it. When you have this kind of advanced revolutionary scientist who can see what other people don't see, who is enabling you to understand what we're up against and training you to take up that same scientific method so that you can lead others, well, you need to dig into it. You need to promote it so that others can find out about it. And donate funds so this can impact society at scale. While you're going deeper, figuring out what you agree with, thinking about and debating what he's raising, donate so that others can get in on this, so that these are the questions people are raising their sights to. Give $5, give $500, and ask others to give. In speaking about the period we're in right now, Bob Avakian recognized that radical change is coming one way or another. And he posed the question, will it be emancipating or enslaving? Will it be revolutionary or reactionary? And this is the question before us urgently. And these are the stakes of getting Bob Avakian's voice, vision, clarity, direction, and leadership before millions. Donate like the future depends on it, because it does.
Finally, before we end today's episode, we want to bring two things to your attention. First, earlier we showed footage of Noche Diaz, the national spokesperson for the Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity. Shortly after the footage we shared with you, he went on to lead a mass crowd of hundreds of mainly youth and others who were protesting to chant, "In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America." And Noche delivered a heartfelt speech that was rapturously listened to by that crowd. And when he was done, he climbed down voluntarily, peacefully, and he was immediately set upon by Chicago pigs.
Let him go! Let him go! Let him go! Let him go! Let him go!
They violated his right to speech. They arrested him brutally, as well as arresting Leo Pargo, who's a leader in the Chicago Revcom Corps for the Emancipation of Humanity. Now look, this is completely outrageous. It is illegitimate. It's a violation of what is supposed to be the right to free speech in this country. And we need to have their backs. And we need to have the backs of everyone who comes under attack for standing up to this fascism. We need to refuse to be intimidated, but instead draw forward many, many more people to oppose these attacks and join this fight. So we want to urge you to stay tuned to revcom.us for updates on their case and to this show as well. Second, we want to give a heartfelt shout out to the revolutionary future rock band Outer National. They've been hosting a concert series at First Live in Bushwick, Brooklyn, under the theme Todo Somos Ilegales. We are all illegal. They are standing with immigrants who are under vicious attack, and they're echoing the title of their broad-minded, politically charged album that was internationalist in sound and spirit. Miles Soleil of Outer National is a good friend of this show. He's been a frequent guest, and he's been curating these concerts, and he's been involving other artists, reaching out to them and getting them involved, like Kip Malone, Brass Queens, Bella Molden, DJ Miles Bolton, Ricardo de Raiz, Las Lloronas de Gaza, and DJ Maria Moreno. He's fighting to forge a broader culture of revolt and resistance among creators and artists. So if you're in New York City or in the area, get out to these concerts on Wednesday evenings, spread the word. And wherever you are, tune in Wednesday nights because these concerts are being live streamed at Outer National's Instagram. We need many, many more artists and culture makers raising their voices and providing the inspiration and the rhythms for what must become a rising movement to change the whole direction of history, not for ourselves alone, but in the name of humanity.
We want to thank the team of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show for putting together this episode. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, subscribe so that you get alerted as soon as the interview drops of Bob Avakian being interviewed by Sunsara Taylor. And with that, we'll see you next week with courage, heart, hope, and determination.